plastering the workshop, second fixing the electrics and finishing these walls. You're going to see all of that and so much more that will help you build your own garden room workshop in this video. In the last one, we finished the outside. In this one, we're more or less going to get the inside of the workshop finished. And once it's done, we're going to look at the pricing and see what this cost me to build. It's very expensive. I went over budget, but don't tell the boss. So first of all, we're going to do the plastering. We're going to plaster the ceiling and then the walls. It's going to take a few days to get this bit done. And I got my plasterer on site with me today because he's a lot quicker and a lot better at it than I am. So before we plaster, we're getting all the scrim tape on. It's 4-inch scrim tape. Now scrim tape doesn't have to be pretty, but it does have to be stuck well and it has to be on every joint of plasterboard. You can see I use my trowel just to stick that in place. I do that throughout the whole room, and the only thing I do have to be careful of is that I don't overlap bits of scrim. Now the reason we use the scrim across all the joints, anywhere where the plasterboard meets or up in corners, is to stop it cracking. If you don't use scrim, eventually you'll get cracks, and them cracks are going to travel all the way along the board. As you can see, this is a fair size ceiling. It's a 6x4 metre building, so this ceiling is probably nearly a 3-bagger, so not something I could take on. That's why I've got the professional here today, my plasterer. He's going to be giving me a hand with this one, and I'm going to kind of labour for him. I'll probably do a little bit, but I'm certainly not good enough to take this one on. So he's going to do this one with us. Don't get any on the floor, will you?
That's a bit hard not
to. So I am pretty much just going to labour for Andy. Keep feeding him hawks full of plaster so we can get it on nice and quick. Especially because we've got the door open, we don't want this to go off too quick and become unmanageable. So the plaster's on, and what we're going to do now is start troweling it up. Andy's never used a speed skim before because he's old school, he's a trowel man through and through. I have used the speed skim and I really like it. So the little challenge is that we're going to get Andy to do the first trowel up on this with a speed skim, and then he can tell us what he thinks about it as a professional plasterer, because I'm not. So, what do you think?
I'll have a go.
Yeah, give it a try. Right. Yeah, give it a go and let us know what you think. So he's been using this about 10 minutes now, and he now said to me, I weren't filming, but he now said to me, I actually really like this, didn't you?
Yeah, it's not so bad.
So the old boy might be converted. That's the ceiling all done. It makes the room look even bigger now. And then tomorrow we're going to be back out here doing some of the walls. Of course, I'm not going to make you sit through the same process again, so I'll do some sort of little edit. The longest bit of any spraying job, masking off. Luckily, there's not a lot to do in here. I've only really got to mask the edges of the door and the cables, and then we can get spraying. So mist coat is a thin layer of white paint, so it's white emulsion mixed with water, and we're going to spray that on using the Wagner 250R sprayer. Because this is quite a big space, using the sprayer is going to be so much quicker than if we were to use a roller and a brush. For this mist coat, I've gone with 2.5 litres of cold, clean water, and then we've got 10 litres of the white matte emulsion from DeWalt, and we're going to put that in with this water in a 15-litre paint scuttle. Now I'm putting all that in there because this is quite a big room and we're going to use it up. The paint sprayer absolutely rinses through paint. This is going to dry really, really fast. That plaster is going to suck the moisture out of that paint. I'd imagine the first coat will dry easily within half an hour, and we'll probably end up just going over this a couple of times, and then we'll be able to get a top coat of white over the top. If you're following along, of course, once you've done the mist coats, you can paint this whatever colour you want. minutes, if that. This thing is so quick. In a room like this, it's a no-brainer. So I'm going to do the walls now, and I reckon that'll take me another 4 minutes. I look like I've been in a snowstorm. It's white, and that is all I wanted. Clean, white, done. What we're going to do now is move on to the second fixing of the electric, so I can finally get this room powered up. In the last video, you'll have seen us do the first fixing, and we're now going to do the second fixing. So let's start with the downlights. We'll get those in, and then when Sam shows up, I'll show you how we get the consumer unit in. Quick wire downlights are really the only downlight that I use these days. You can install a quick wire downlight in a matter of seconds, not even a minute. And that's because of the quick wire quick connector system. And I think what we'll do, we've got 10 of these to install, and we'll have a little bit of fun and see how quickly I can install 10 downlights. Now this is going to be nice and quick because I've already got the quick wire connectors on my cable. We did all this in the last episode, and the good thing with the quick wire connectors is we just plastered over this with the cables and connectors already done. So we already knew where all the spotlights are going to go, and it just saves loads of time. I'm going to speed the video up so you don't get bored, and then I'll show you how long this took at the end. Time is going, let's go. 4 minutes and 35 seconds to install 10 downlights. How quick is that? And that is why they're called quick wire. Quick wire downlights are the best, and that's why they sponsor this channel. I'll put a link down below in the description. Go check them out because they make my life and your life so much easier. Thanks, quick wire. I then moved on to installing my door controls, but silly me didn't mark where the studs were, so I ended up having to fix this with plasterboard fixings, and then I got it all wired up. The door's working, all good. Of course, once we've got the workshop powered up, we will plug the door into this double socket. So this is where the wiring gets a little bit more complicated because we've got a 2-gang switch going on here. So we've got one switch to operate the lights inside and another switch to operate the soffit lights outside. Now it's a little bit more complicated, but I'll show you how I make it easy. So we've got 3 cables coming down from the switch. You can see I wrote on these when we were first fixing. We've got the feed coming into the switch, so that's got a permanent live in there. We've got the inside lights, down lights inside, and the soffit lights, so the lights outside. So I start by stripping back all of my cables, and then I add earth sleeving to all of the bare copper earth conductors. I then put all of the earths into a Wago and tuck them in the back of the box. I'm going to strip back my neutral conductors and do the same with those. I pop them in a Wago and tuck them in the back of the box so they're out the way. The only thing that leaves us with is 3 brown conductors. So we've got the feed, inside lights and outside lights. And we now need to wire those into the switch. So we've got a 2-gang switch, and what we want is a permanent live feed, so that feed in cable. We want that to go into the common, so you can see there's a common terminal there, so permanent live into the common. And then we're going to link the 2 commons together with a small link wire. What that does is gives each switch a permanent live feed. So it'll give a permanent live to the inside lights and a permanent live to the outside lights. So we've got the permanent live feed coming into the first common terminal. Then we're going to put the link wire into the other common terminal. Do that one up as well. That leaves us 2 brown conductors. We've got the switch line for the inside lights and the switch line for the outside lights. So I'll strip those 2 back. So we've got L1 on this side of the switch and L1 on this side of the switch, and then we just pop those into the L1 terminals on each side of the switch. And now we can just pop that switch back to the wall. I then move on to wiring up my sockets, which are on a ring. If you want individual instructions on how to wire up sockets, I do have an electrical playlist on the channel that I'll link in the description. All the second fixing's done apart from this, the little consumer unit. Before we boarded the wall, I made notes of where the cables were so I could just cut a hole and pull them through. I can then fix the consumer unit in place on plasterboard fixings. Sam does this every day, so I'm going to leave him to do the wiring on the consumer unit.
First thing I'll do is I'll strip all the cables back. I don't know why I'm bothering to speak because Cam's going to edit me out anyway. So now, as you can see, I've got the main switch in and I've put the MCBs in, and now it's ready to be terminated. So first I like to connect my mains cable in, which is the bigger 10mm cable, and that comes from the consumer unit in the garage. I always like to connect that in first and dress it in as neat as I can. These smaller boards aren't always easy because there's not as much space as in a normal size fuse board. Right, so that's the neutrals and the earths both connected in. And finally, you've just got to connect the lives, which get dressed into these MCBs here. And that is your lives connected into the MCBs. And finally, we just got to put the buzz bar in, which goes in the bottom there. That's the buzz bar connected in there. So this fuse board is all done. Okay, sorry Cam, I'm terrible at this.
So that was Sam's first time presenting, so go easy on him. Hopefully you understood a little bit about a consumer unit install from that little clip there. So we've got a storm gland on the whisker box, glanded that off there, and I'll just mark where the holes are and fix this box to the wall. I then connect up the cables within the whisker box to connect the 10mm from the consumer unit in the garage to our armoured cable feeding the workshop. So someone's going to notice we haven't put the earth leads on the SWA at this end. We have earthed them on the other ends of the cables. We couldn't do it this end because of the reducer that goes in the whisker box. And by connecting this little lead, we've earthed the SWA. I'll just pop a little bit of silicone sealant where the cable's going through the back of the box there. Just pop the cover on. And job's a good one. The consumer unit's in and the power's on. So what we're going to do, we'll do some testing in a minute, but let's just see. We have light, and if we look out here, and we've got soffit lights as well. So you guys are loving the giveaways so far, and I've got the biggest giveaway that we've done on the channel yet. This is the DeWalt power tool kit that you can win for just £1. So we've got all cordless DeWalt brand new tools. We've got a multi-tool, we've got a drill and an impact driver in a T-stack case, and we've got a cordless DeWalt circular saw. With these tools comes two 5Ah batteries and all the accessories as well. So whether you're a DIYer starting off on your journey or a tradesman that needs some new tools, this is an awesome giveaway for you. And you can win these tools for just £1. The details are over on Raffle. Go over there, check them out. I've limited the tickets as usual to give you guys the best odds of winning. I'll pop a link down below for Raffle where you can find all the details and grab your tickets. These competitions sell out so fast. Once all the tickets are sold, I'll write sold out next to the link so that you guys know the competition's been drawn. Congratulations to the winners that we've had on our competition so far, and thanks everyone for entering. It really helps to support the channel. So it's done, but what did it cost me? What savings did I make? And should you build one yourselves? Well, if we start right at the beginning with the concrete base, we can see that the concrete, rebar, machinery hire and sub base cost me a total of £1,240. Now, whilst that sounds expensive, it's relatively cheap in comparison to things like ground screws that would probably cost you a little bit more than that. But using concrete is a little bit more expensive than some of the other DIY methods like threaded rods and timber bases. So there are savings to be made if you need to. It's worth noting that as you look at some of these prices, I have a trade account with a local builder's merchant, so I have slightly better pricing than a high street DIY store like your B&Qs out there. If you go to those places to get these materials, you're probably going to pay a little bit more. Following on from the base, the next episode we did are the walls and the roof. And the costs were made up with the timber, the rubber roof, and the capping fascia boards around the edges. And that came to a total of £2,650. We then moved on to external finishing, the breathable membrane, the battens that hold the cladding, the composite cladding, and the Cladco metal cladding. Now, I did get slightly better prices on this, to be completely transparent, because of the channel. So I did save a little bit of money there, but I've put the prices down that you guys would be paying for them. So that is probably the biggest part of our bill for the build, and that came out at £3,750. £290. We've got the insulation, that's a big chunk of the bill, the plasterboard, the plaster and the floor, and that came to £2,160. So again, your internal finishing is a big part of the bill, but of course you want it to look nice when you've finished it. There's ways you could save money if it was purely a workshop and not a garden room. You wouldn't even need to plaster it, for example. You could just board it. You could have a cheaper floor. You could leave a concrete floor. There's multiple ways to save money, but if you want a nice finish, that's what it's going to cost you. We then move on to the electrical stuff, so the cable, the armor cable, the storm glands, the consumer unit, the lights, the sockets, all that stuff. I've put that down as £500. So if we then move on to other sundries, I've put £500. So paints, nails, glues, things that you pop out to the shop and buy. I've allowed £500 for that, and I've just spotted something I've missed. The door, the roller door. That's probably going to cost you another, say, £900 at a guess, roughly £900 depending on options. So we could probably say that we could put that price that you see there, that's already quite high, up by another £900. So let's say nearly £12,000 on materials to build a garden room like this. So is it worth it? Should you build one? Well, aside from being a fun build, it is practical, there's loads of space to put things, and it's going to up the value of your house very slightly, apparently. From what I've read, it's quite a good return on garden rooms, so if you're looking to make a little bit of money and you want something like this, that's a bit of a no-brainer, in my opinion. And like I say, it is a fun project to build, and it is very versatile for so many uses. So in my opinion, yes, I would rather build something like this than have a conservatory, for example. I think it's worth building one. But I suppose the burning question is, if you had a tradesman come and build you one of these versus building one yourself as a DIY project, what's it going to cost you? And I've looked on websites at ones that are a similar spec, people that also build these, they are charging around the £25,000 mark for a building of this size. So what you can see from that, if we were to spend 12 grand on materials, you can pretty much say you're going to spend about another 12 grand on labour. So it's definitely worth building one of these yourself. So head back to the start of the series if you haven't seen them videos and build one yourself. And there we are, back in the rain. We're ending this series just as we started it. I'm a bit sad to bring this series to a close, but my workshop does look awesome and I've enjoyed bringing you guys along for the journey. If you've enjoyed it, check out one of these videos because you're bound to enjoy them as well. And I'll see you guys in the next one.